In a family where heartbreak has become as familiar as tradition and emotional turbulence almost feels like an inherited trait, a new and unexpected chapter has opened, one that might finally shift decades of unresolved conflict. Kody Brown, the once confident patriarch of TLC's sister wives, for years the emotional collapse of the Brown family unfolded slowly, painfully, and often publicly. Yet through every crack in the foundation, every tearful confession, and every shattered relationship, one question lingered in the air. Would Kody ever truly take responsibility for the part he played in the destruction of his once massive plural household? Now, in a twist that feels almost surreal to those who have watched him for over a decade, he is finally beginning to face what he has avoided for so long: his own accountability. The seismic shift began quietly, long before cameras or confessionals captured it. According to individuals close to the family, Kody has spent the last several months in deep introspection, a process unfamiliar to the man who once believed that his vision of plural marriage was strong enough to withstand any storm. This introspection appears to have been triggered not by the departure of his wives, which he initially blamed on disrespect, betrayal, or miscommunication, but by the emotional distancing of his children, particularly the older ones who no longer see him as the father they once admired. For a man who built his identity around the image of a large, unified family, the realization that many of his own children no longer felt bonded to him hit harder than any marital dissolution. Kody began to understand the emotional gravity of this estrangement not through arguments or dramatic confrontations, but through quiet moments when he realized his phone no longer lit up with their names. Birthdays came and went with only obligatory messages. Holidays were celebrated without him. Invitations were no longer extended to every gathering. The family group chats no longer buzzed with the lively chaos that once defined life in the Brown household. It was in the absence, those painful, echoing voids, that he began to understand that something was fundamentally broken. For years, he justified his decisions under the belief that he was acting in the best interest of the family. Whether enforcing strict COVID protocols, criticizing wives for their perceived disloyalty, or insisting that Robin's household required more of his attention, he believed himself to be navigating uncharted territory as best he could. Yet the damage accumulated in ways he never anticipated. The fractures were subtle at first: the sighs, the withdrawn conversations, the quiet disappointments. But by the time the full rupture occurred, it felt irreversible. The breaking point for Kody did not come through a single confrontation. Instead, it arrived through accumulation of small realizations that forced him to see himself not as the misunderstood leader he portrayed on television, but as a deeply flawed man whose choices often caused pain rather than unity. His estranged relationships with several of his adult children, the quiet resentment that lingered between him and Janelle's sons, the emotional distance from Christine's daughters, and even the discomfort expressed by some of Mary's children, all of it gathered like a storm cloud that could no longer be ignored. What surprised many of those closest to him was not that he finally acknowledged the harm, but how vulnerable he became in the process. According to insiders, he began expressing remorse privately long before he admitted anything publicly. These private conversations were raw, unpolished, and emotional in ways that Sister Wives viewers have rarely seen him from. Gone was the defensive tone that once dominated his interactions. In its place was a man confronting the uncomfortable truths that have followed him for years. This transformation did not happen overnight. Kody has always been a man driven by conviction, sometimes to a fault. He believed deeply in the structure of plural marriage, so deeply that he was convinced that any cracks in the family foundation had to be caused by others not embracing the lifestyle fully. It took years of being confronted with emotional consequences, particularly from his children, to finally reconsider that belief. When multiple adult children express not just disappointment, but deep pain over feeling rejected, ignored, or unimportant in comparison to Robin's children, something within him shifted. It was a realization that the love he believed he was giving had not been received in the way he intended, and perhaps more importantly, that he failed to make the necessary adjustments to acknowledge their needs. What truly shook the family was the way he began taking ownership, not with excuses, not with deflection, but with honesty. During conversations with his children, he began admitting to behaviors he had long rationalized. He acknowledged that he had played favorites even if he never intended to. He admitted that he had been harsh, reactive, and at times emotionally distant. He confessed to prioritizing his fears and insecurities over the emotional well-being of his older children. Most shocking of all, he recognized that the way he leaned heavily into Robin's household created a chasm with his other wives and children that grew wider with each passing year. One of the most emotional moments came when he acknowledged to one of his older sons that he had become the kind of father he never wanted to be: inconsistent, unavailable, and overly critical. This conversation, described by a family insider, left both men in tears. It was a moment of truth that neither had expected, and it marked a turning point in the healing process. Where there had once been blame and resentment, there was now vulnerability and the faintest spark of reconciliation. This newfound accountability, however, has rippled across the entire family in ways both hopeful and uncertain. Christine, who has long moved on from the emotional turmoil of her marriage, has been surprisingly open to seeing Kody attempt to rebuild himself. She understands better than anyone what it means to grow out of unhealthy patterns. While she remains protective of her children, she has encouraged them to at least listen when Kody reaches out. This stance reflects the maturity she gained after leaving the marriage and finding her own happiness. She knows healing is not linear, and that progress comes in small, sometimes uncomfortable steps. Janelle, who has maintained a calm detachment since walking away from the relationship, has also expressed cautious optimism. For years, she tried to communicate her needs and her son's needs to Kody, only to be dismissed or misunderstood. Now, seeing him acknowledge these failures has brought a sense of vindication, but also a cautious hope that some emotional bridges might eventually be repaired. Her interactions with Kody are still grounded in reality rather than emotion. She is not rushing toward reconciliation, but she is willing to recognize growth when she sees it. Mary, whose marriage with Kody endured years of emotional distance before dissolving, has experienced her own complicated reaction to his transformation. While she is no longer emotionally invested in rekindling a romantic partnership, she has expressed compassion for the man she once loved. She, too, recognizes the difficulty of confronting personal flaws in such a public and scrutinized environment. Though their relationship will likely never return to the place it once was, the possibility of friendship is no longer impossible. Of all the adults in the family, Robin has perhaps had the most complex reaction to Kody's shift. As the wife who remained with him while others left, she has been blamed by fans and even some family members for the fractures that occurred. But behind closed doors, she has long pleaded with Kody to mend his relationships with his older children. She has expressed regret for her perceived role in the family divide, and she hopes that Kody's accountability will help reshape not just his relationships, but the family narrative as a whole. As someone who wants harmony but has often been caught in the emotional crossfire, she carries a mixture of hope and guilt as she witnesses these changes. It is the children, however, who have been most deeply affected by Kody's introspection. For some, his efforts at self-reflection have opened the door to tentative communication. Phone calls have been answered, texts have been exchanged, and in some cases, emotional conversations have taken place for the first time in years. For others, the wounds remain too fresh. They have expressed respect for his honesty, but remain unsure whether reconciliation is something they are emotionally ready for. Kody understands this now in a way he never seemed to before. He has acknowledged that healing cannot be rushed, that his children are entitled to their pain, and that it may take years before trust can be rebuilt. Perhaps the most astonishing part of this emotional evolution is that he initiated it without cameras rolling. While the show has been his life for over a decade, these moments of accountability happened quietly, away from producers and public scrutiny. This suggests that he is not performing growth for an audience, but genuinely working through it for himself and his family. This authenticity has resonated with his children, even those who are still hesitant to reconnect. They see a man who is not just saying he wants to do better, but actively trying to understand how to do better. This journey has also forced Kody to confront the underlying issues that contributed to his failures. He has begun exploring the roots of his insecurities, especially those triggered by the family move to Flagstaff, financial instability, and the emotional instability of maintaining plural relationships in an increasingly modern and independent world. He has recognized how fear drove many of his decisions, causing him to retreat into the comfort of Robin's household because it felt less unpredictable. This retreat, however, came at the expense of relationships with his other wives and children, something he now sees clearly. These revelations have not magically solved the Brown family's problems. There is still distance, guardedness, and unresolved hurt. But for the first time in years, there is also emotional movement. There is the possibility of healing where there once was only silence. And perhaps most importantly, there is a father who is finally ready to do the work necessary to mend the relationships that matter to him. The Brown family, as fractured as it may be, is entering a new chapter, one defined not by polygamist ideals or televised drama, but by a genuine attempt to rebuild emotional foundations that were once neglected. Kody's steps toward accountability have surprised everyone, including himself. He knows this process will be long, difficult, and at times painful, but he has finally acknowledged that the discomfort of change is far preferable to the numbness of familial estrangement. In a way, his transformation reflects the larger story that has always captivated viewers of Sister Wives. The Browns have never been perfect. They have struggled, cracked, fractured, healed, and fractured again. Yet through every storm, they have demonstrated resilience, even when that resilience took different forms for each family member. Now, with Kody finally confronting his failures in a way no one ever saw coming, that resilience is beginning to look like something else entirely. The possibility of renewal. In a family where drama has become a second language and emotional turmoil feels like a recurring season, a new and unexpected fracture has erupted that even longtime fans of Sister Wives didn't see coming. Mykelti Brown-Padron, one of the most outspoken, yet historically even-keeled children of the Brown family, has now delivered a relationship-shaking blow to her father, Kody Brown. In a declaration that spread across social media faster than wildfire, Mykelti revealed that she has officially cut ties with Kody until he does something he has apparently avoided for years: make peace with the rest of his children. This ultimatum lands at a time when the Brown family is already splintered, reeling from breakups, public confrontation, years of unresolved resentment, and the fallout of Kody's perceived favoritism toward Robin and her kids. Now, Mykelti's boundary has shifted the entire Sister Wives narrative yet again, leaving fans wondering whether Kody is finally going to take accountability or lose even more of his already strained family relationships. For viewers who have followed the family since its debut, Mykelti's announcement represents a colossal shift. This is the same daughter who once tried to maintain neutrality despite enormous tension surrounding her parents' separation and the conflict between Christine and Robin. She defended Robin at times, maintained contact with her father more consistently than many of her siblings, and often tried to remain diplomatic. But diplomacy has limits, and in the wake of everything the family has been through, Mykelti has made it clear that those limits have been reached. Her stand is not a mere emotional outburst. It is a powerful and intentional boundary drawn with clarity, conviction, and a deep sense of responsibility toward her siblings, especially those who feel deeply hurt by their father's behavior. To understand why Mykelti's announcement feels like an earthquake in Brown family history, it is necessary to reflect on her unique position in the family. Among Pristine's children, she has been one of the most publicly balanced when it comes to discussing her father. While some of the older siblings openly expressed anger, disappointment, and emotional abandonment, Mykelti kept a line of communication open with Kody longer than most. She has always tried to establish her own sense of identity separate from the heavier emotional battles taking place around her. Because of this, fans often viewed her as the bridge between family segments that seemed irreparably divided. For that bridge to now be closed signals just how deeply the fractures run behind the scenes. Her decision wasn't impulsive. It follows years of watching her siblings struggle emotionally with their father's choices, favoritism, and absence. McKelty explained that she would no longer participate in a dynamic where she maintains a relationship with Kody while many of her siblings remain hurt and ignored. She stated plainly that until he takes meaningful steps toward healing those wounded relationships, she is stepping back. In other words, she refuses to allow her connection with him to serve as a false indicator of family unity. If he wants a real relationship with her, he must invest effort into repairing the relationships he allowed to deteriorate. This demand reflects a growing trend among the older Brown children, who have transitioned from silent observers to vocal participants in the unfolding emotional reality of their family. McKelty's siblings, particularly those from Christine and Janelle's side, have spoken openly in recent years about feeling emotionally abandoned by their father. Many believed Kody prioritized Robin and her children over everyone else, especially during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. Fans watched the emotional consequences unfold in real time as multiple adult children confronted him on camera. Still, despite tearful confessions and sometimes explosive interactions, many felt that Kody never fully grasped the seriousness of the situation. McKelty's stance suggests that she believes accountability has been missing for far too long. Her demand is not for apologies alone, but for actionable peace, genuine reconciliation, and long overdue emotional repair. Her position also hints at an unspoken truth. Maintaining a relationship with Kody while her siblings suffer created an emotional burden she could no longer carry. She wants her children to grow up witnessing healthy dynamics rather than chaotic, uneven ones where some family members receive affection while others receive indifference. Her children deserve healthier examples, and she clearly wants to break generational patterns that have left many Brown siblings dealing with lingering trauma. The central question now becomes, will Kody take this seriously? Historically, he has responded defensively to accusations from his older children. He frequently cited being misunderstood, overwhelmed, or unfairly criticized. He has often expressed that his kids should show him more respect or gratitude instead of demanding change. But with McKelty now stepping back, he can no longer dismiss the concerns as isolated or exaggerated. If even the daughter who once defended him publicly is now withdrawing her presence, the magnitude of the emotional rift cannot be ignored. This new chapter for the Browns is one built on boundaries, something their plural family structure rarely allowed room for. As the wives left one by one, Christine first, then Janelle, then Mary, each did so after realizing they had compromised their emotional needs for too long. Now, their adult children are following the path of reclaiming emotional autonomy, asserting that love without respect or accountability is not enough. In a family built on the promise of unity, shared sacrifice, and eternal togetherness,